The sound, that's what sliced through my peaceful Saturday morning like a blade through butter. A monstrous, guttural, mechanical scream. My heart leaped into my throat. Then, through my kitchen window I saw it. My Hedge. My 30-year-old, award-winning, beautiful Hedge, being massacred. And there she was, Brenda, or Chainsaw Karen as she'd soon be infamous for, my new neighbor, resplendent in a hot pink designer tracksuit, her platinum blonde bob gleaming, those immaculate nails wrapped around the handle of a roaring chainsaw. She looked proud. And I, Arthur, a 75-year-old man clutching my chest in my favorite old cardigan, could only watch in abject horror as she carved a gaping maw into decades of my life's work. She actually paused, saw me, and yelled over the din, "Just making some improvements, Arthur. This monstrosity was blocking my precious sunlight, and frankly, it's an eyesore. You'll thank me later." Have you ever poured your soul into something, a living legacy of love and memory, only for someone to brazenly destroy it right before your eyes, believing they had every right? Well, that was my reality. But what this chainsaw-wielding vision of entitlement didn't grasp was that her quest for precious sunlight was about to plunge her into a darkness of legal battles, financial ruin, and social oblivion. She thought she was just trimming a hedge. She had no idea she was actually detonating a bomb under her own life, and I, the quiet old gardener, was holding the evidence that would light the fuse. My name is Arthur, and up until 6 weeks ago, my life was a portrait of peaceful retirement. After my beloved Martha passed away 5 years ago, this house, this garden, became my whole world. It was our shared dream, this little slice of green in a bustling world. Martha, she adored her roses, claiming each bloom was a tiny love letter from the earth. But the hedge, that was my canvas. A magnificent 10-foot-high, 30-foot-long tapestry of yew and boxwood, it was the emerald guardian of our property. I remember when we first planted it, Martha was heavily pregnant with our David. She'd sit on a little stool, a wide-brimmed hat shading her face, handing me the young saplings, and we'd talk for hours about the future, about the children who would play in its shadow. She joked, "Make it strong and tall, Arthur, like our love." And I did. It won the Evergreen Eminence Award twice, and the Mayor's Choice for Suburban Splendor once. Those certificates still sit on my mantelpiece, a quiet testament to years of devotion. Being a retired architect, I've always found solace in order, in beauty sculpted from dedication. That hedge was my daily meditation, a living link to Martha. Every snip of the shears, every careful shaping, felt like a conversation with her. Our son David and our daughter Susan, they understood. They'd grown up with that hedge as the backdrop to countless birthday parties and family barbecues. My grandchildren Lily and Tom called it the Green Dragon's back, and would spend hours inventing games around it. So, you see, it wasn't just a collection of leaves and branches. It was family. It was memory. My days were simple. Tea on the porch, the comforting rhythm of weeding and pruning, the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers, a chapter of a good history book, a friendly wave to old Mr. Henderson. Quiet. Content. Then the storm named Brenda arrived. The for sale sign on the Petersons' house next door came down, and the moving trucks rolled in. Out stepped Brenda, mid-40s, radiating an aura of someone who expected the world to unfold according to her precise specifications. That first proper sighting is seared in my memory. A lime green designer tracksuit this time, oversized sunglasses that hid her eyes but not her disdain, and a phone seemingly fused to her ear, her voice carrying easily as she directed the movers with sharp, impatient gestures. A large, ostentatiously branded tote bag hung from her arm, practically a weapon in itself. Being a man who believes in neighborly courtesy, I ambled over to the edge of my property, where my glorious hedge stood sentinel. "Welcome to Chestnut Street," I offered with what I hoped was a warm smile. She lowered her sunglasses just enough to peer at me, her lips forming a perfect, unimpressed circle. "Oh, right. You're the person from next door." Not even the dignity of being called a neighbor. "Arthur Penwright," I supplied. "And yes, I suppose I am. This old hedge is a bit of a local landmark." I patted a perfectly sculpted curve affectionately. Her gaze flicked to the hedge, then to me, a small, irritable frown appearing between her impeccably plucked eyebrows. "It's rather dominant, isn't it?" she observed, her tone suggesting dominant was synonymous with offensive. "Blocks out a considerable amount of potential." I chuckled a little uneasily. Well, it provides wonderful privacy and the birds certainly love it. It's won a few awards over the years, you know. Awards? She said the word as if it were a peculiar species of garden pest. Well, my aesthetic leans more towards minimalism and light. This, she waved a dismissive, perfectly manicured hand towards my life's work, is quite the light hog, wouldn't you say? It's been thriving here for 3 decades, well within my property boundaries, and has never been a bother to anyone, I replied, trying to keep the defensiveness out of my voice. Martha always said I was too polite for my own good. Perhaps not a bother to some people, she sniffed, managing to imply that those people were clearly lacking in taste and standards. She then pivoted back to her movers, her body language a clear dismissal. My stomach did a little flip. This wasn't just a new neighbor, this felt like an invading force. The ensuing weeks were an education in the art of Karen-esque psychological warfare. The passive aggression started subtly, then escalated. Pamphlets for emergency tree felling and aggressive shrub reduction began appearing on my porch with unnerving regularity, sometimes weighted down with a small decorative stone as if to say, I was here and I judged your foliage. Then came the drive-by pronouncements. I'd be peacefully tending to Martha's roses, and Karen would be on her patio, her voice carrying clearly over the fence, a fence she'd already complained was too rustic. Honestly, Clarissa, you wouldn't believe this jungle next door. It's like living next to a haunted forest. It's dragging down the whole ambience of my property. My property, she called it, as if her mere presence extended her domain. She even made a formal complaint to the city bylaw office, claiming my hedge was a dangerous visual obstruction, and probably housed vermin. Officer Miller, a kind young man who'd admired my garden many times on his patrols, paid me a visit. He looked embarrassed. Mr. Penwright, he'd said, we have to follow up. But honestly, your hedge is a credit to the neighborhood. I told her as much. He left, shaking his head, after confirming it was perfectly compliant and vermin-free. Her next tactic was trying to turn the other neighbors against me. She actually canvassed the street with a little clipboard, trying to gather signatures for a petition to have my hedge professionally assessed for community impact. Most of my neighbors, thankfully, are sensible folk. Mrs. Davies, who's lived here even longer than I have, apparently told Karen that my hedge was an institution and that she should try appreciating beauty instead of trying to bulldoze it. Karen, I heard, had pursed her lips so tightly they almost disappeared. The stress, though, was insidious. My peaceful sanctuary, my garden, began to feel like a battleground. I started losing sleep, waking with a jolt at any small noise, imagining the sound of illicit shears. My appetite waned. David noticed it on our weekly call. Dad, you sound tired. Is everything all right? I confessed my troubles and he, practical as ever, insisted on the security camera. Just for peace of mind, Dad. A deterrent if nothing else. I felt a deep reluctance. It seemed so unneighborly, so distrustful. But after I found a series of small, symmetrically drilled holes at the base of several U-trunks, as if someone had tried to inject something into them, my unease turned into a cold dread. David came over the next weekend and installed a small, very discreet camera high up on the eaves of my garden shed. It had a wide-angle lens, perfectly covering the entire length of the hedge and a good portion of my back garden. I prayed it would record nothing more sinister than squirrels burying nuts. The final direct confrontation before D-Day, Destruction Day as I now call it, was particularly nasty. She caught me as I was bringing in my recycling bins. No tracksuit this time. She was in sharp business attire, looking like she was about to close a hostile takeover. Arthur, she said, her voice devoid of any warmth. I've been more than patient. That hedge is coming down. Either you arrange it or I will. And I'll bill you for the service. My hand holding the bin lid tightened. Brenda, we've been over this. The hedge is on my property. It is legally compliant. It is staying. You have absolutely no right to touch it. Her eyes narrowed. Right? Old man, I have the right to enjoy my property as I see fit. And your overgrown monstrosity is infringing on that right. You're being deliberately obstructive and, frankly, selfish. Selfish? I felt a tremor of anger. This hedge was planted with love long before you ever conceived of buying property on this street. It has history. It has meaning. Meaning? She scoffed, a sound like air escaping a punctured tire. It's dead wood and leaves. Its only meaning is that it's in my way. Consider this your final warning." She turned and marched back into her house, the click of her heels on the pavement like tiny, angry gunshots. I stood there, heart pounding, the threat hanging heavy in the air. That's when I knew the camera wasn't just for peace of mind anymore. It was for evidence. The Saturday it happened, I had an early morning appointment for my annual flu shot. Martha had always been a stickler for those. I left just after 7, waving to Mr. Henderson who was collecting his newspaper. Karen's blinds were still drawn. Her driveway was empty, her car presumably in her garage. I gave the hedge a loving look, its deep green foliage shimmering in the early light. It looked particularly beautiful that morning. If only I'd known it was a farewell. I was back by 9:15, earlier than expected. The street was quiet. Too quiet. As I turned into my driveway, a faint, high-pitched whine reached my ears. Not an insect, something mechanical. Then, as I killed the engine, the sound exploded into that horrific, violent roar of a chainsaw. My blood turned to ice. I fumbled with the door handle, my breath catching in my chest, and scrambled out of the car, a terrible premonition gripping me. I rounded the corner of my house, and the scene that met my eyes will haunt me forever. There she was, my neighbor Brenda, the self-proclaimed queen of light and minimalism, wielding that monstrous chainsaw like a barbarian queen. Sawdust and mangled leaves rained down around her. A huge, jagged wound, at least 10 feet wide, had been torn through the heart of my hedge. She was attacking another section with a focused, almost gleeful violence, her body braced against the machine's power. A strangled cry escaped my lips. She stopped, the chainsaw sputtering. She turned, her face flushed, a triumphant, wild glint in her eyes. And then she uttered those unforgettable words, "Just making some improvements, Arthur. This monstrosity was blocking my precious sunlight, and frankly, it's an eyesore. You'll thank me later." Thank her? I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. My hand flew to my mouth to stifle a sob of pure anguish. 30 years of devotion, of memories, of Martha's laughter echoing through those branches, annihilated. Reduced to a pile of green debris. You can't," I choked out, words utterly failing to convey the hurricane of grief and rage inside me. "Oh, I believe I just did, Arthur," she chirped, actually smirking as she revved the chainsaw again. "It's astonishing what a woman can achieve with a little determination and the right power tools, don't you think?" That's when the ice in my veins solidified into cold, hard fury. And I remembered. The camera. My silent, digital witness. The twist wasn't just her audacity, it was her monumental arrogance. Later, when I reviewed the footage with the police, it was all there. Her sneaking onto my property, furtively glancing left and right, but never up at the shed, then the grim satisfaction on her face as she yanked the starter cord. She even paused at one point to monologue to a nearby squirrel. "He'll see. This is for the best. A clear view is a happy view." The sheer, unadulterated entitlement was breathtaking. My initial paralysis of shock gave way to a chilling calm. This was no longer about a damaged plant. This was about a profound violation, a deliberate act of malice by someone who believed herself above all rules, all decency. "Brenda," I said, my voice remarkably steady, though my insides were a raging inferno, "turn off that chainsaw. And step away from my property." She actually let out a short, derisive laugh. "Or what, Arthur? Are you going to challenge me to a duel with your pruning shears? Don't be daft." She gestured mockingly with the still idling chainsaw, a move that sent a fresh wave of sawdust over Martha's prize-winning azaleas. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. "Or Brenda," I replied, my voice like chips of ice, "I will call the police and have you arrested for trespassing and malicious destruction of property." Which is precisely what I am about to do. I pulled out my mobile phone. Her smirk wavered just for a second. "You're bluffing. It's a hedge, for crying out loud. A civil matter at best." "Try me," I said, my thumb already pressing the numbers 911. As I clearly and calmly reported an act of vandalism in progress, perpetrator on site, armed and dangerous. A chainsaw is dangerous. Karen's face was a fascinating study. Smugness gave way to disbelief, then a flicker of genuine alarm, before hardening into indignant rage. With a furious sigh, she switched off the chainsaw. The sudden silence was deafening, broken only by the chirping of oblivious birds. "This is outrageous," she shrieked as I ended the call. You're the one who should be arrested. For horticultural negligence. And I'm suing you for the emotional distress this ugly thing has caused me." By now the commotion had drawn an audience. Mr. Henderson was on his lawn, looking thunderous. Mrs. Davies was on her porch, clutching her pearls. Little Timmy from 2 doors down was pointing. The curtain of suburbia was twitching everywhere. The police, bless their swiftness, arrived in under 5 minutes. 2 squad cars for officers. Karen immediately transformed into the wrong victim. "Officers, thank heavens," she gushed, rushing towards them, all wide-eyed innocence and fluttering hands. "This man, he's lost it. I was merely attempting some much-needed, frankly overdue safety pruning on this dangerously overgrown, public nuisance." She gestured vaguely at the mangled remains of my hedge, and he came at me screaming. I was in fear for my life. She even managed to squeeze out a tear, which she dabbed at with the back of her sawdust-covered, designer tracksuit sleeve. I waited. One of the senior officers, a woman with a no-nonsense air, turned to me. "Sir, your version?" "Certainly, officer," I began, my voice still low and controlled. "That woman is Brenda, my neighbor. She is currently trespassing on my property. She has, as you can see, deliberately and maliciously destroyed a significant portion of my award-winning, 30-year-old hedge with that chainsaw." I pointed to the offending tool lying on the grass. "And most importantly, officers, I have the entire incident, from her illicit entry onto my land to her current, dramatic interpretation, recorded in high-definition video. You could have cut the ensuing silence with a knife." Karen's jaw dropped. Her carefully applied foundation couldn't hide the sudden blotchy flush rising up her neck. "Video? That's illegal. You can't film me without my consent." "Ma'am," the officer said, her voice firm and unimpressed, "if you are on private property committing an offense, you have no expectation of privacy. And yes, he can film you. May we see this footage, Mr. Penwright?" I led 2 of the officers inside, while the other 2 stayed with a now spluttering Karen. On my son's laptop they watched. They saw her smug entry, her self-congratulatory monologue, the brutal efficiency of the chainsaw, her triumphant grin as she surveyed her handiwork, and her utterly brazen lies to me when I discovered her. Karen, who had been escorted to my doorway, watched too, her face crumpling as her lies were laid bare. Her expensive tracksuit suddenly looked cheap and tawdry. When the video ended, the lead officer simply looked at Karen. "Ma'am, based on what I've just seen, you're under arrest for felony malicious destruction of property and criminal trespass. The felony charge," she explained, "was due to the assessed value of the mature hedge easily exceeding several $1,000s. I had the recent insurance appraisal ready." "Felony?" Karen shrieked. "For a few branches? This is insane. It was an eyesore. I have rights. I have a view to maintain." Her voice cracked into a full-blown wail. "My lawyer will hear about this. You'll all be sorry." The payoff was pure, unadulterated poetic justice. They cuffed her. The click of the handcuffs on those manicured wrists was a sound I'll treasure. Her platinum bob was askew, mascara tracking through the sawdust on her cheeks. She was blubbering incoherently as they led her, struggling and protesting, to one of the squad cars. The neighbors watched, aghast and fascinated. Mr. Henderson actually started a slow clap, which a few others joined. The sight of Karen, the chainsaw queen, being driven away in disgrace, was profoundly satisfying. I saw her looking back at my ravaged hedge, then at me, her eyes filled not with remorse, but with pure, impotent fury. That look told me everything I needed to know about her character. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind, but a gratifying one. Karen was booked. Her mugshot, I heard, was not flattering. She spent a night in jail before her high-powered lawyer, no doubt summoned at great expense, managed to arrange bail. The story became the talk of the town, Chainsaw Karen of Chestnut Street. Someone even posted a blurry photo online of her standing defiantly beside the butchered hedge with the chainsaw, moments before my arrival, looking exactly like the Hook video image. Her carefully curated image shattered. The legal process was lengthy, but with irrefutable video evidence, the outcome was never really in doubt. My lawyer, a sharp young woman David found, was magnificent. Karen's attempts to paint herself as a civic-minded hero battling rampant foliage were systematically dismantled. She eventually pleaded guilty to avoid a public trial and almost certain conviction on the more serious charges. Her sentence included substantial fines, a restraining order keeping her 50 yards from my property line, mandatory anger management therapy, and full financial restitution for the hedge. The experts valued the replacement and restoration at close to $20,000, a sum that made Karen visibly choke when it was announced in court. Her life on Chestnut Street became untenable. She became a local pariah. Children would whisper "Chainsaw Karen" when she walked by. Her attempts to sell her house were initially hampered by the notoriety. No one wanted to live next to that story. Eventually she sold it at a loss just to escape. Poetic justice, her obsession with her view and property values, ended up costing her dearly in both. As for me, the outpouring of support from my true neighbors was overwhelming. They brought casseroles, offered help with the cleanup, shared condolences as if I'd lost a family member, which, in a way, I had. The hedge, Martha's hedge, was gone. That part still aches. But standing where it once stood, I don't just feel loss. I feel a surprising resilience. I, Arthur Penwright, the quiet widower, the gentle gardener, had faced down a force of destructive entitlement and, with the help of a little technology and a lot of love for what was right, I had prevailed. I've started replanting. It's slow work. The new saplings are small, vulnerable. But each one I place in the earth is an act of defiance, an act of hope. It will take years for the new hedge to reach the glory of the old one, but it will grow. And it will stand as a testament not just to Martha's memory, but to the fact that even in the face of brazen arrogance, decency and justice can and must take root and flourish. The view from my kitchen window is different now, more open. But every morning as the sun streams in, I'm reminded that some things are worth fighting for. And sometimes the greatest satisfaction comes not from an unobstructed view, but from the clear sight of justice served.